Hi, and welcome back to another Nonprofit Minute. And today I want to talk about training your staff. As a leader of an organization, I have been passionate about developing a culture and developing a staff through training. And the biggest example I have was the last position I held as an executive director of a really large nonprofit. And I had a very large staff and a very diverse staff. So I wanted to create a training program that would give us kind of a level foundation for us all to start from a common language, a common understanding. I've been a huge fan of Disney leadership, and I'm fascinated by it. I can't understand how one person can oversee 50,000 people. To me, that is a structure like no other. It's ironclad. If you go to any Disney park, Disney World, Disneyland, Paris, Japan, it's the same. They have the same culture, same understanding. They may be in a different country where you have to recognize the country's culture and the people's culture, but the Disney culture is all pretty much the same. No one's wearing tattoos. No one's got facial hair. Those are the two most popular. So I've always been fascinated by that. So 30 years ago, my wife was going to school to get a business management degree, and she was reading a book called The Disney Way. This is actually the first edition. That's how old I am. So The Disney Way is a great book. It is a great leadership book that really explains the structure of Disney's leadership. Love this book. Love this book. Love this book. But for my staff, it was a little too textbooky for them. So I investigated and I looked and I came across another book called Creating Magic by an author, Lee Cockrell. Lee Cockrell is a former executive vice president of Walt Disney World. He ran Walt Disney World. So I kind of figured he knew a thing or two about leadership. So as I read this book, it's an easy read. It's a fantastic read. It's one of the few books, and what's really kind of fun is I've learned to I've come to know Lee a little bit, and so when I read the book, I hear his voice. He's from Oklahoma. He's got this draw, and but it's one of the very few leadership books out there that I believe in about 99% at my core, about structure and organization and recognition and empowerment and things like that. So what I did is I created a training program where I had 16 staff members at a time going through it. It was a cross section of my staff, from those that were in the office to those that were in maintenance to those that were in a store. I mean, it was a cross section of staff, amazing people. And we started off reading this book. And I have a strong belief that anybody who can influence change is a leader. You don't need a title, you don't need a pay, you don't need a business card to have the title. Anybody can be a leader. And when I start the presentation off with that, inevitably I always had one person say, "Yeah, not me, that's above my pay grade." Because these people, when you're working with a group of people, everyone's got a different paradigm and background, right? So what I want to do with this leadership thing is bring everybody down to the same foundation. So we started, and one of the first things I did is we created what we affectionately called the Gong Show. So it's where people pair up on week one, and this is an 8-week program. Week one, and they were told to create a full-on business plan presentation for the class in one of 3 areas: modifying a program, a money-saving idea of a program, or a brand new program. And it had to be, how's it going to be funded? What kind of staff? What kind of timeline? That's a real official business presentation. I don't care how they presented it. If it was just handouts and stapled together, great. If they wanted to use flip chart, great. If they wanted to use PowerPoint, great. Whatever they wanted to do. But it was a chance for them to do this presentation. The caveat was, if the class chose that their program was really good and they wanted to do it, those people presenting their program had to lead that project. So I'm empowering the staff. So over the course of 8 weeks, We learned about how do we value everybody? How do we recognize everybody? Um, what makes you the brand of the company? People got to understand that when they're working for a company, it's not a 9 to 5 job. It's a 24/7, 365 job with social media. What you do after hours and the pictures you put on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter after hours is going to reflect on your organization. We wanted to talk about how do we create more training. We would say that this training was not an institution but an idea. So we started bringing in what we call a leaders lunch, where we brought outside leaders in to come speak to the staff and talk about their leadership experience. We had book clubs, reading books, and people would recommend books, and we'd be reading different books and talk about different books. We would talk about how do we set clear, concise, understandable goals company wide so everybody understands it, and then talk about how do we flatten the organization, become more efficient. More levels of bureaucracy, the less efficient an organization is. How do we recognize and appreciate each other? It's not just leadership recognizing staff. What if we created a program where staff can recognize staff for doing good? So we've created a program for that. And then our goal as leadership was we want to make sure people are so well trained and so exceptional that we're preparing them for their next job. So that's what the training program was. And it kind of grew into many things. The gong shows, the gong shows were phenomenal. I'm going to say we did about 99% of presentations given, and lots of staff leading their projects. We came up with codes of conducts. We came up with staff newsletters. There was all sorts of cool stuff that the staff came up with. It wasn't leadership driven. It was staff driven. And that's what came out of this training program. So much so that over the course of about 10 years, it created an empowered culture. Going back to Lee Cockerell, as a nonprofit, you're always looking for a different fundraiser. Everyone goes to their share of golf tournaments and chocolate and wine events and auctions. We all have auctions, right? So I wanted to do a different kind of fundraiser. So I was reading Cockerell. Lee has four books out, and they're all fantastic. And I emailed him. I found his email address and I emailed him. And I said, hey, how would you ever think about coming and doing a leadership presentation in small town North Idaho? And within hours, he wrote me back. Well, after fangirling for about 20 minutes, the guy I've been reading for the last 8 years just emailed me, and I'm like, oh my God. He says, I'd love to. So in October of 2017, we brought him to town. And I'm going to tell you, we had, over the course of 2.5 days, we had 1,500 people show up. It included an evening reception. It included a morning sponsorship reception. It included an all-day seminar. It included an evening reception after the event, and then a staff get-together on the last day. I used Lee up pretty good. And that whole event, 2.5 days, 1,500 people, 6 staff members did that. 6 staff members. They were a select group of people who saw the vision, had input on the vision, were empowered, were understood what needed to be done, understood their roles, and made it happen. That event would have never happened without those 6 people. So I have seen the proof that in empowering a staff, a well-trained staff with clarity of vision can move mountains. So there's your nonprofit minute for today. As you move forward, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.